Okay, I think we are recording. So these are two of our great friends. These are Jason and Polly Noble coming, well, live to us right now, but on a recording to the rest of everyone from Hong Kong at a place called Crossroads International. And so let me make sure that you can see them before I get too much further. Make sure that they are spotlighted. I think they can. But yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to there in Hong Kong?
Yeah, so thank you, Dave and Katie. We have such amazingly fond memories of our time together at Regent, and man, so many ways that was that group that we were in together, that small group really is, I don't know, it was such a watershed, a milestone, things we always think back to. And we were just talking with the boys when they came in or chatting earlier. We were all out at Chung Chow together, our two families. So yeah, it's been fun to do these miles with you, and wishing we were a lot closer.
Definitely.
But you're asking kind of where we're at and how we got here kind of question.
Yeah, and kind of what's we're in this class talking a lot about creating types of communities, within our smaller kind of extended family household communities. And yeah, what are you guys doing there, and what sort of community are you a part of?
Well, just really briefly, I mean, you can look up online and see what Crossroads does in very neutral terms at crossroads.org.hk. We do four main things. We help people in need by receiving goods and then processing them and getting them out to people in need in Hong Kong and internationally. I see this really as like grants of goods to help small grassroots groups be able to make a difference in their community, whether it's a school, an orphanage, medical clinic. A lot of Sunday morning clubs like yours would be, if they were helping out a group somewhere in the world, they're like, hey, they have a building, but they have nothing in it. And so they might even come alongside that group and say, hey, this is how you apply for this grant of goods. And it should be, and that container that comes, that 20-foot or 40-foot container should be everything that's needed for that school or that orphanage or that medical clinic, technical vocational training, community center, whatever it is. So that's the first big thing. And on our 9 acres, that's the thing you see the most of. And if we have a team of about maybe 60 full-time team with another, I don't know, 15, 20 kids, that's our community that lives on site and does that work. Forklifts, pallet jacks, lots of room for processing. That's the big thing that you would see on our site. But as far as the community goes, if that's the work around us, and the kids and the families and the parents are all kind of living and working on that site. Even this morning we were talking about doing chaos or creating harmony all over the site, working around this morning, 8:30 to 9:30 on Saturday. Now because of COVID, we do it twice a week, so we can include disinfecting. But kids are running around and at the same time, and my boys are helping digging out, tree stumps and that sort of thing. But if I was to say the reason we came to Crossroads is very much the community. And really the reason why we were so attracted to it in many ways is because our time together in Regent. That group of families that were all meeting once a week, but we got together far more than that, informally and formally. And I love that the Joe's Soup was amazing, bringing people together. And I think when we heard that Crossroads was doing this kind of thing, this kind of work to help people in need, but we're doing it as a community, that was really attractive to us because we've just been part of a community that was so knit together, hearts and minds. Right before we left to Vancouver, we had another couple be chatting for us, kind of our send-off. And I remember what stuck in my mind from them chatting for us was that our next thing we did, and we had no idea what it would be, that our next thing that we did would be for the whole family. And meanwhile, I was like, yeah, exactly. It was articulating something that was in our hearts, but needed to be articulated so that we could be thinking about What an amazing answer to that. When we heard about Crossroads and then came to visit and saw not just that people were coexisting together or living next to each other or spending a lot of time talking or doing things together or working together. It was, we very much need each other. And so, yes, you go to, I have a tops 2-minute walk to my office, which is great. My boys commute like an hour and a half each way to school, or our boys are like spend more time on the road than we do commuting, which is definitely a grief. And COVID, the side effect has been that they've been able to be home and part of the community again, like they were when they were little. They didn't go to school site. But if I think of the thing that really connected us to Crossroads and has borne out over the past 8 years we've been here, has been that community. And it's hard to express that. It's hard to share, what makes community work. Because I feel like that community is as much about what is going well as is not going well. And you're having, you are, or it's that being and becoming. We are a community, but we're becoming hopefully a better community, or the community we need to be.
Yeah.
Well, I can keep talking, but
are there rhythms or structures or things that happen in the life of your community that help it go well?
Help you guys connect with each other?
Yeah, we meet in the mornings from 8:30 to 9:30 each day. And before, I think the entire conversation when we talk about what we do is before COVID we did, is we would get together in the morning for an hour, and that would be like our first hour of the day that would be devoted to the MD, and we would gather to chat and to talk about the work that we were doing. And it was great because we all have the same focus of why we're doing it. And so it was just a good time for us to be able to gather together to sing or chat or whatever it was at that day. So now since February, we've been doing 15 minutes where we gather in the morning and have announcements in an outdoor area, kind of spread out. And then we gather in small groups and have a little time of looking into the good book or chatting. And then we used to have team meeting or team dinner once a week as well on Wednesdays, and we haven't been able to do that. But we have lunch every day that we can do takeaway, so people can kind of sit around in different areas just to kind of catch up. I think we have these small groups that before we could have breakfast once a month. And it was fun because we used to have them on Fridays, but when our boys went to school, which was in 2013, they weren't the group anymore for breakfast. So you guys do that every month. And so because of that, they were like, oh, it's been fun for the boys to be able to see people again on those days and say we're missing out so much of the week, being gone from 7 in the morning to 5:30 or 6 each day. So it's been really, really great for them to continue those relationships. And we love the way our community talks to our boys and just wanting to really know who they are and hear about their day, and they just affirm them, and it's been really, really special. Our oldest is almost 17 in a few weeks, and then we have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old.
How old were they when they came?
And they were 9, 8, 5, and 2, 2.5.
So I'm curious, you guys have mentioned already how it was significant even in kind of responding to the invitation to come there in the first place, that this was something for your whole family and not just sort of one person taking a role or a job or a particular title. How has it been to kind of view your assignment there as a family sort of calling or family initiative?
well, I think when we started going to Thailand, the boys were a lot younger, and it was, I come from investments, so I'm also learning what does it mean to help and not hurt, or to be meaningfully coming alongside communities. So it's as much me learning as an individual doing, work helping people, but as Polly and I being involved doing it, and inviting the boys into what we're learning, but also as parents, like how can we cultivate in them? And I say it that way because even the Step Challenge, last fall, and we'd done a bit of a fundraiser a couple years before that, and it was a bit different. But it's kind of, they're totally different age and maturity, and each kid's different. How motivated are they? How disciplined, confident are they, and all those kinds of things. And so I don't want to put too much of a gloss on that, but it really was inviting them and then trying to find as a parent, like how much of the cultivating, encouraging, and then sometimes saying you need to do that to carry through on the things you want to have done that you've already said you want to do. So it's that kind of, as parenting, it's like there's no science to it, and there's, you can't rule, by fiat for sure, and definitely something like that. But there's also a sense that you can't just kind of encourage them with kind of saying, hey, it'd be nice for you to do this, And so the Step Challenge we did last December was basically saying in the 5 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's, let's do a step for each of the 5,000 Burmese refugees in Thailand. And so to use that as something to help bring some attention, not just to them, but to other refugees. And we started an Instagram challenge channel because they love Instagram. I care less about Instagram. I personally am viscerally, but that's where all their friends are. And so we ran that, and honestly, the coolest thing about it for me as a parent was we were trying to raise, I think, 20,000 US to help fund a few things for the kids to be safer at the schools they're at. One of them is a trash dump school. It's called Morning Glory 2. And a lot of the kids are orphans, not just refugees, but they're orphans. And so they don't even have a family to live at the trash dump. They're basically just trying to find a place to sleep. And so a lot of them get abused. We even sent around a photo of one of the little babies that was born because a girl was, taken down in one of the cornfields. And so she had a baby. And so they had to find a way for the baby to be taken care of. And so they needed a safe place. So we're raising money to have a little dormitory at the school for the kids to sleep. So connecting different boys, different ages, understanding those things at different levels. But the coolest thing was we were raising it. And I'm thinking, that's a lot of money. Even when I was in high school, to raise that much money would have felt really daunting. So again, trying to come alongside and help and encourage and help them do their part. And honestly, to make that long story slightly longer, we were short maybe about a good chunk of money. And I thought, they've done great. They've raised more than half, maybe more than 3/4 of the money. And I'm excited. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to have to resign ourselves that we raised a good amount of money. This is really encouraging. And we'll be excited to see what it does in Thailand with this group. But at the 11th hour, literally at 11:45 on New Year's Eve, the rest of the money came in. Someone we had no idea would give. We'd just been out on a little camping thing here in Hong Kong, which is the other thing we love about Hong Kong, is a place we could camp in the winter. And we're just talking to a family and sharing what we were doing. And they literally sent me that email, and I'm like, could it be any more 11th hour? Literally 11th hour. That was the boys to say, none of us had the means to do this. And nobody had this in the pipeline or expectation. And he, in his own way, provided.
That's like a story I've heard a lot at Crossroads, Jason.
Yeah. And that when we came, there were a lot of stories that we had not been here for.
Yeah.
But here. And I would say that's one of the stories, and there's been others for the last 8 years, but we've actually been able to be part of it. And it's different to hear the story, that gets exciting, but then when you go through it, you realize your participation in that story has a lot to do with where you were at and trusting him. Yeah. individually, as a family, as a larger, extended family or community. And so you have you remember the sweaty palms, you remember the hand wringing, like the, things you're thinking about. And then when what is J.R. Tolkien said in it, he shows up and you're just like, I can't, but man, why don't I trust you to do this more often? I should be believing you for bigger things.
One of the things that Katie and I have both said on many occasions is just how when you're part of a community that's on assignment and is accomplishing what it was called and created to do, and just being around that or seeing it. I know there are the big crazy stories, and then there's the everyday life too. But Crossroads is one of those places that just in visiting several times over a number of years, it gets us excited about what that looks like in our little communities back here. But one of the maybe to kind of wrap up our conversation today, one of the things I think that was always exciting to us is not only how much that community shares life with itself. Like the families are connected. There's about 60 to 80 people, something like that live on campus there. Yeah. And you're sharing in the work. Everybody's sort of knowing one another and celebrating. There's a great amount of joy. But there's also a steady stream of people from the city, steady stream of people internationally. That it's not just like a community that exists unto itself. There's almost it seems very fluid or comfortable for outsiders to be welcomed and just celebrated and brought right into the work that's happening there. So yeah, like how would you say your community and the way it operates, how does that happen? How do you bring the community beyond your walls or beyond your campus, into the work and the things that you're passionate about? Yeah, your mission and vision. I want to hear from Polly for a minute. How's that happen for you? You're in the Fair Trade Cafe and you're out. I mean, you're a super connected person.
Are you you're saying bringing people in to help serve along with us?
Yeah. How does the community outside of Crossroads get pulled in, and welcomed into the work you're doing?
Yeah, it's been cool because we have, with the simulations, that brings a lot of people in who maybe don't know what we are. They just know they're coming to a simulation.
Yep.
And so they'll come in with schools or corporate groups. Sometimes we'll have clubs, but not very often. And it's been cool to see, for instance, the refugee run, which is this 80-minute simulation that brings in a lot of people, but a lot of students, and I'm in the simulation, so I get to see how they go from laughing to full-on serious faces, and wow, this is what people go through in a, just they're only feeling it for those few minutes. But then they get to know more about Crossroads, and they want to come and volunteer, and it's really amazing to see the neighbors that will come in and volunteer and want to help serve the people that they do. And we have a guy that's very faithful that comes in to fix bikes that get sent all over the world, and it's just awesome to see him come in all the time and want to keep going and keep getting these bikes out, because he knows how happy these kids are when they can get their own bike and be able to ride around and just have that added excitement. We have internships in the summer that are 2 intakes of interns, lots of college age kids that come in and are wanting to volunteer somewhere, add it to their college experience. And we have one girl that I can think of right off the top of my head who's become a dear friend of ours, and she loved her internship so much that she just kept coming back. So she comes in once a week and continues to volunteer, and sometimes she stays for dinner and comes over to our house to hang out with us. And so it's been really fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
we get like groups of like 25 to 30 people from a company or a school. Sometimes kids by the busloads are coming and doing a simulation and then volunteering afterwards. And I love you see them afterwards and they felt something and then they got to do something and now they get to think about what they did and think about what can they do the next time. We have like, companies even like, yeah, well, one that's not, well, it's not terribly far from you guys, at least up in the Northeast, like Hasbro comes out and, they have their day of, day of joy, 24 hours, everybody in the company over globally has to volunteer. But you see people, they have a number of those options around town and many of them take crushes because they like coming. And it's not just the work. I've realized over time, it's who they're doing it with. In our community of, as you said, 60 to 80 people, depending on the time of year, they're people that come from places we serve. They come from Cameroon, where there's civil war in the English-speaking provinces, or they're from Crossover State in Nigeria that has the refugees from Cameroon, or from Sri Lanka, or Philippines, or wherever they're from.
Yeah.
And so that is the community that you're doing life with and are affirming your kids, but you're also seeing them envisioning people and helping them refurbish that computer that's going to go to a school that has no computers, not even in their computer lab that they have computers. And they're bringing those corporate people or those students to do the work to refurbish and then seeing it go out to help people. Or they might be processing clothing, or they might be doing electrical, and they're learning at the same time what is good health? What are the things that they need? How do you make sure you send them things they need and not what's going to undermine a local, industry or jobs? And if we get about maybe 100 interns each year, about 6,000 community volunteers on an average year, this not being an average year. But
sure.
That's a lot of people. I mean, I love the interns who come, and they come for 6 weeks on average during the summer, and they'll every day be imbibing not just what's hopefully good health, that's what we're striving for, but also as a community. And you see them, at the beginning, kind of just getting introduced. Many of them don't know anything about who we're serving, who we're ultimately serving, but they imbibe that. And my favorite, though, is gap year kids who come. We have a relationship in Germany. We get others who come, and they'll come for 6, 8, 10 months. And man, they go home transformed. They just graduated from high school. And one guy, his parents came from Germany to visit, and we did the poverty simulation. His parents joined the poverty simulation that we do. His son had been here for about 6 months. This was towards the end of his particular one. He was doing a short one. And was walking down the hill with his parents, and his dad said, we left Simeon. We sent Simeon to Crossroads. He was a boy. And now he's a man. Mm. I was just like, as a father, I was like, that's what I want to see happen to my boys. I want them to go someplace that's going to affirm them, call them up, and say, you're in a community, it's safe. There's a lot of things that kind of help you keep going into spending time with him. Yeah. But we're calling you up. We know you have a lot more that you can do, and you're going to give you real responsibilities.
Last word here. As you know maybe a little bit about our community just from our chats and catching up the last month or two. If you were talking to folks here who are thinking about how to more intentionally come together in a smaller sort of household community, and to do that with not just the purpose of getting to know their friends or the people in a pre-existing community better, but also to exist for the good of those outside of who we're already connected to welcome others into those spaces. Any advice you guys would have, or just things you'd say, hey, think about this, or try this, or do this, or live in this way, based on the 8 years you guys have spent living in a community that's really clearly carrying out its mission?
Well, I'll give a crack at that answer first, and then we'll end on a high note. I have to give Polly the last word. I remember when we were in Singapore, and I was really trying to figure out what did he want me to do. I wanted to be intentional with my work and be about his work. Even then, So we were doing a study on Henry Blackaby, experiencing him.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things that really stuck with me is he says, if you want to know what to do, just look and see where he's working and jump in.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing. And even as I look back, that study was pretty simple. I mean, it's not really that intensive, but that thought has stayed with me. And I've noticed even when we were living in Singapore, a lot of people who had helpers, we never did. But a lot of our friends who did, they got involved in the families of the helper that might come from the Philippines or Indonesia. And they thought back into where they came from and their families and the situation they were. And they just kind of looked around them and saw where in our community, in our neighborhood, and then not just satisfied to help those people in need in their community, or whether they're refugees or migrants or people who are struggling, or in other ways having challenges, but then thinking, okay, where are they coming from? Where is their community? Where is the challenges or the root challenges that they come from? And then kind of following that string back and allowing themselves to be changed in the process, which is always the hard thing. It always is the uncomfortable part of that process, is kind of being inconvenienced or doing things differently to be a part of people's lives. And so I think, at least from my perspective, is just look where is he working and where is he moving, and then jumping in, being willing to, you can't do everything, right? Just because something is needed doesn't mean you're called to do it, but just being willing to kind of put that in front of them and say, is that something you'd like us to be a part of, or at least take a step in that direction? That's for me. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about being in, we were my hometown in Iowa, and then went to Singapore and Canada and here. And it was amazing to have our first meeting with our friends and our family, to tell them what we were doing. And we had DJ, David Bigby, who was here, and talking to them and telling them about what we were going to be doing here. And then all of a sudden, it just literally clicked in my mind of, wow, we are going to be supported by family and friends, not just in finance, but by them chatting and by them just talking to us and supporting us in so many ways. And it was such a huge, it has been such a huge blessing, all these 8 years of being known and supported by family back home. And by people, friends and family, by people that we didn't think would support us, and they have been our biggest supporters, and people that we thought, well, maybe they would, and they haven't. And it's been fine. It's been great. Like, we still have great relationships with all of those people, and we love them. And it's just been a very different of what I thought it was going to be. And we love what we're doing here, and we continue to stay because we are so supported by those people.
But I gotta add, just the ending is it's your story, but on that note, these things only work. You're asking where should you serve or where should you step in, and it has to be, especially as a couple, like something that's life-giving for both.
Yeah.
And even as you're, no situation is perfect for everybody. But how do you, and even when we were talking last time, how you guys are working to make things work for both of you and for the kids, and make sure it's healthy and life-giving for everyone. And that's the same thing. And I know, Dave, you've been flexible at each point. And even as things weren't always perfect, and there's so many examples of that. But how you've always sought to find, what is the thing that he's asking you to do, and to be flexible to do that, including covering for your husband's own mistakes, telling you he'd never have to raise support, and being willing to change. So yeah. So I'm sorry, that was a lot longer answer than you were looking for, but yeah.
Oh, good. Well, we are really grateful for your friendship, and grateful that we've got to see you guys in situ, in action there in the community. And yeah, we're really excited too for when you guys come to Vermont. I don't know when that's going to be yet, but we're putting it on the calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're waiting for you. We're just gonna wait by the phone. The light's still on.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys for being with us today.